Dean Martin was known around the world as the man who made life look easy. With his smooth voice, charming smile, and relaxed personality, he seemed to glide through life without a single worry. People loved watching him sing, joke, and laugh with his famous friends from the Rat Pack. He looked like someone who had everything: fame, money, success, and happiness. But behind that calm and cheerful image was a man who struggled deeply with emotions, loneliness, and pain. The truth about Dean Martin's life is far more complicated and sad than most fans ever realized. While millions saw a carefree entertainer, those close to him knew a man who often hid from his feelings and used distance as protection. His dark side was not about crime or scandal, but about quiet suffering, broken relationships, and heartbreak that followed him for decades. Dean Martin was born Dino Paul Crosetti on June 7, 1917, in Steubenville, Ohio. His parents were Italian immigrants who worked hard to support their family. His father was a barber, and his mother stayed home to care for the children. Italian was the first language spoken in their home, and young Dean struggled with English when he first started school. Growing up was not easy. Money was tight, and life in a working-class town during the Great Depression was tough. Dean left high school at just 16 years old and took many hard jobs to help survive. He worked in steel mills, pumped gas at stations, dealt cards in illegal gambling houses, and even tried boxing for a short time. These early experiences made him strong, but they also taught him to hide weakness and avoid showing pain. From a young age, Dean learned that life could be harsh, and showing emotion was not always safe. Music slowly became Dean's escape from his difficult life. He loved listening to singers like Bing Crosby and dreamed of becoming a performer. He changed his name to Dean Martin and began singing in small clubs and on the radio. His voice was smooth, warm, and calm, unlike many singers who sang with heavy emotion. Dean sounded relaxed, almost like he was talking through a song. People loved it. His style made listeners feel comfortable, and his popularity slowly grew. His big break came when he teamed up with comedian Jerry Lewis in the 1940s. Together, they became one of the most famous comedy duos in entertainment history. Jerry was loud and silly, while Dean played the cool, handsome partner. Audiences couldn't get enough of them. They starred in movies, performed on stage, and dominated television shows. But behind the scenes, their relationship was not easy. They argued often, and Dean sometimes felt like he was not taken seriously as an artist. When they finally split in 1956, many people thought Dean's career would be over. Instead of failing, Dean Martin surprised everyone. He reinvented himself as a serious actor and successful solo singer. He starred in strong dramatic films and showed that he was more than just a comedian. At the same time, his music career reached new heights. Songs like That's Amore, Everybody Loves Somebody, and Memories Are Made of This became huge hits. In 1964, one of his songs even knocked the Beatles off the top of the music charts, proving that Dean Martin was still incredibly popular. He also became part of the legendary Rat Pack, alongside Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and others. Together, they ruled Las Vegas, with shows full of music, jokes, and charm. Dean's stage persona was the relaxed man with a drink in his hand who never seemed serious about anything. People believed he was always drunk, but many times his glass only held juice or tea. It was part of the act, an image carefully created to make audiences laugh and feel comfortable. Dean Martin also hosted his own television variety show for many years. The show was a huge success and made him a household name. He sang, joked, and welcomed famous guests every week. Everything he did looked easy, like he didn't even try. But the truth was different. Dean worked hard behind the scenes and took his career seriously. The relaxed image was something he carefully built to hide stress and pressure. While his public life was filled with applause and fame, his private life was slowly falling apart. Dean was married 3 times and had 8 children, but he often struggled to be close to his family. His career always came first, and he spent long periods away from home. Those close to him described him as loving but distant. He had trouble talking about feelings and avoided emotional conversations. This created pain in his marriages and made it hard for his children to feel truly connected to him. Dean's first marriage ended as his fame grew, and the pressure became too much. His second marriage lasted much longer, but also eventually failed. By the time of his third marriage, Dean was already a legend, but still searching for happiness. Sadly, none of his relationships brought him lasting peace. Instead of facing problems directly, Dean often chose to walk away or escape. Alcohol became one of his main ways of coping with stress and pain. While he wasn't always drunk like his stage character suggested, drinking did play a role in his private life. It helped him avoid dealing with sadness, disappointment, and conflict. Friends said that Dean hated confrontation and preferred silence over arguments. When problems appeared, he would withdraw instead of trying to fix things. Over time, this behavior left him feeling alone, even when surrounded by people. The darkest moment of Dean Martin's life came in 1987, when his son, Dean Paul Martin, died in a tragic plane crash. The loss completely broke him. Those who knew Dean said he was never the same after that day. The joy that once filled his performances disappeared. He stopped working as much and slowly pulled away from the public eye. Dean once said that you never truly get over losing a child. You just learn to live with the pain. But in truth, he never fully healed. He became quieter, more distant, and deeply sad. The man who once laughed easily now struggled just to get through each day. His friendships, even with people like Frank Sinatra, became weaker as he continued to retreat emotionally. He had spent his whole life hiding pain behind humor and charm, but now the pain was too big to hide. In his final years, Dean Martin lived quietly away from the spotlight. Years of heavy smoking damaged his health, and he was eventually diagnosed with lung cancer. Doctors offered surgery that might have helped, but Dean chose not to go through with it. He seemed tired and ready to accept whatever came next. In 1995, he passed away at his home in Beverly Hills at the age of 78. When news of his death spread, Las Vegas dimmed its famous lights in his honor, showing how important he had been to the entertainment world. Dean Martin was buried in Los Angeles, and his grave carried the words from his famous song, "Everybody loves somebody sometime." It was a fitting goodbye for a man loved by millions. Dean Martin will always be remembered as a legend, a smooth singer, a talented actor, and one of the coolest entertainers of his time. But behind the fame was a man who struggled quietly. His dark side was not about bad behavior or shocking secrets. It was about loneliness, emotional walls, and pain he never learned how to face. He made the world smile while hiding his own sadness. In many ways, Dean Martin's life is a reminder that success does not always bring happiness, and that even the people who seem the most carefree can be carrying heavy burdens inside. The truth behind his charming image is both heartbreaking and deeply human. A story of a man who gave joy to the world while quietly fighting his own battles. As Dean Martin moved further into the later years of his career, the world around him was changing quickly. New styles of music were becoming popular, and younger performers were taking over the spotlight. But Dean still held a special place in the hearts of fans who had grown up listening to his songs and watching his movies. Even when he appeared less often on television and in films, his presence was still powerful. When he returned to the big screen in the early 1980s, in movies like The Cannonball Run, audiences were excited to see him again. The movies were not loved by critics, but fans enjoyed them, and they made a lot of money. Dean's relaxed charm still worked, even in a new generation of entertainment. It reminded everyone of the cool, effortless star he had always been. At the same time, Dean returned briefly to music. He recorded a song called "Since I Met You Baby," which became a modest hit. He even appeared in a music video that aired on MTV, which was a big deal at the time, since MTV was mostly focused on young artists. The video was directed by his youngest son, making it a meaningful family project. It showed that Dean was still willing to try new things, even late in his life. But while these moments brought some joy, they did not erase the sadness that lived inside him. The pain from his son's death still weighed heavily on his heart, and he struggled to find the happiness he once seemed to have so easily. Those close to Dean noticed that he became more quiet and withdrawn. He no longer enjoyed being the center of attention like he once did. Parties, shows, and big events that once excited him now felt exhausting. He preferred staying at home, spending time alone, or with only a few close people. The bright lights of Hollywood no longer brought comfort. Dean had spent so many years pretending everything was fine that when real tragedy hit, he didn't know how to cope with it openly. Instead of talking about his feelings or asking for help, he did what he had always done. He pulled away. This emotional distance protected him from pain in some ways, but it also made him feel more alone than ever. Dean's relationship with his children was complicated. He loved them deeply, but he had difficulty showing it. Because of his busy career and emotional walls, he often wasn't as present as they needed him to be. Some of his children later spoke about how they admired their father, but also wished they could have been closer to him. They saw a man who cared, but didn't know how to express it with words or affection. Dean had grown up in a tough environment where feelings were not openly shared, and that pattern followed him throughout his life. Even as a famous star, he still struggled with the same emotional habits he learned as a young boy. His friendships in Hollywood also reflected this side of his personality. While Dean was surrounded by famous and powerful people, very few truly knew what he was feeling inside. His bond with Frank Sinatra was one of the most famous friendships in entertainment history. They supported each other, performed together, and shared many unforgettable moments. But even with Sinatra, Dean sometimes chose silence over honesty when conflicts appeared. Sinatra was known for being strong and direct, while Dean avoided confrontation. When problems came up, Dean would simply walk away instead of talking things through. Over time, this habit caused distance in relationships that once meant a lot to him. As the years passed, Dean's health began to decline. He had smoked heavily for most of his life, which slowly damaged his lungs. In the early 1990s, doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer. It was serious, and they told him that surgery might give him more time. But Dean chose not to go through with it. Some believed he was tired of fighting after years of emotional pain. Others felt he simply wanted to live whatever time he had left on his own terms. Whatever the reason, Dean accepted his fate quietly, without drama or attention. In 1995, Dean Martin fully stepped away from public life. He no longer made appearances, gave interviews, or performed. Fans who had grown up watching him felt his absence deeply. It was strange to imagine a world without the man who had once been everywhere, on television, in movies, and on the radio. But Dean seemed at peace with staying out of the spotlight. He spent his final months surrounded by memories of his long career and the people he loved. On Christmas Day in 1995, Dean Martin passed away at his home in Beverly Hills. He was 78 years old. The cause of death was respiratory failure linked to his lung disease. When the news spread, the entertainment world paused to honor him. In Las Vegas, the famous bright lights of the Strip were dimmed in his memory. It was a powerful tribute to a man who had helped shape the city's entertainment scene for decades. Few performers had left such a strong mark on both Hollywood and Las Vegas. Dean Martin was laid to rest in Los Angeles, among many other legends of film and music. On his grave were words from his most famous song, "Everybody loves somebody sometime." Those words captured the love fans had for him, and the warmth he brought into their lives through his performances. Even though his life was filled with pain and struggle, he gave happiness to millions of people around the world. Today, when people look back at Dean Martin's career, they often remember the smooth songs, the funny moments, and the cool personality. They see the legend. But behind that legend was a man who carried sadness quietly for many years. He was someone who learned to hide pain instead of facing it, who avoided emotional conversations, and who often felt alone, even when surrounded by love and success. Dean Martin's dark side was not about scandals or bad behavior. It was about the silent battles he fought inside himself. It was about grief he never fully healed from, and emotions he never learned to express. His story reminds us that fame and money do not protect people from heartbreak. Even those who seem the happiest on the outside can be hurting deeply on the inside. In the end, Dean Martin's life was a mix of incredible success and quiet tragedy. He made the world laugh, sing, and smile, while hiding his own pain behind charm and humor. And perhaps that is what makes his story so powerful and so human. He was not just a legend on stage. He was a man who struggled like so many others, trying to find peace in a world that often brought both joy and sorrow. Even after Dean Martin's death, his influence on entertainment never faded. New generations continued to discover his music through movies, television reruns, and online platforms. His smooth voice still played on radios, and his classic films remained popular among fans of old Hollywood. Many modern singers admire his relaxed style and tried to copy the calm way he delivered songs. Unlike performers who sang with loud emotion, Dean made everything sound simple and natural. That special talent kept his legacy alive long after he was gone. Over time, more stories about Dean's private life slowly came out through interviews with family members and close friends. People began to understand that the cheerful man they saw on screen was only part of the story. Those who knew him best spoke about his kindness, but also about his struggle to open up emotionally. They explained that Dean was never mean or cruel. He was simply a man who had learned to protect himself by staying distant. His childhood hardships and early struggles had shaped him into someone who believed hiding pain was easier than sharing it.